My name is Evan Morton, and I'm the curator of the Tweed Heritage Centre. I've been here since its founding in 1989. I'm not that old. I'm 60 hours a week, volunteer curator. Even in a way rural community like Tweed, there's a lot of heritage here. And you think of like the gallery out here with the societies. They're all gone, those societies. But they contributed to this community, and they deserve to be recognized. And if we don't have a place like this preserving their contribution, it'll be just dismissed as if, well, they weren't relevant or significant. I always admired the pioneers, what they went through in their life, and yet they built this country. And I see so many young people today who have no appreciation of that. And I think that's a tragedy, that everything that we have was gained through the sacrifices of those who came before us. And it's not appreciated.
Hey everybody, it's Adam here with another episode of my Unsung Heroes series. Today I'm introducing you to Evan Morton of Tweed, Ontario. Oftentimes you meet the most interesting people in the quietest places, and Evan is no exception to that rule. As you heard in the intro, he's a 60-hour-a-week volunteer curator of the Tweed Ontario Heritage Centre. Basically, he has the community's most precious antiques and historical items under his watch. Along with a couple of other volunteers, he's the main one though for all this. And on top of looking after all the antiques and doing some walking tours through the Heritage Centre, he's also started up an archives of over 500 family histories in his area. And he's collected that from scratch. He's written it all down by hand, and he's got it all in binders in a big room in the back there. You'll see that in the video later on. So, you know, in an era of chest-thumping billionaires and attention seekers and all that kind of stuff, it's very refreshing and inspiring to meet somebody like Evan, who lives a life of quiet service for his community. And so I thought I'd do a video on him. He's known in his community, and for whoever wants to watch this, well, now he's recognized a little bit outside his community for the great work he does. So without further ado, here's Evan Morton from Tweed, Ontario. Enjoy.
I knew only one grandfather, and he died when I was 10. He was 92. But I always enjoyed listening to him talk about when he was young. And then also my father, who was the clerk treasurer of the village of Tweed for 50 years, knew the community inside out. And I think all of that developed in me an appreciation of what came before. And then in 1977, Hungerford Township had an Old Home Week, and there was a magnificent exhibit over at the Township Hall. And as you looked at all the documentation and the photographs and the artifacts, you wondered what's going to become of all of these after this show is over. And we felt, and a group of us, oh, we need a museum in Tweed. But it was about 10 years before the Historical Society was formed, and then we started collecting. And here we are. You can see here Tweed memorabilia, the Tweed High School, and then souvenirs from the community over the years. We have a Native Heritage Gallery, a tool collection of Doug Connors and of his father before him. We also have the lodges and organizations, the railroads, and then we have the quilt gallery, the general store, the children's gallery, radio gallery. It's quite an eclectic collection that we have here, but that makes it interesting when you do a display because people have different interests. You know what it's made of? Porcupine quills. With an awl, you had to punch holes in your design, and then you'd keep your quill soft in your mouth and put the one end through, stretch it over, put the other end through the other hole. Can you imagine doing that for each one of these? When it was finished, you clipped them off at the back and put in a birch bark lining. That particular art piece, done by a local native girl, Linda Brindle. She has a unique gift of painting on birch bark and then incorporating feathers and beads to create the overall picture. Most of the time your beads and feathers will be with the leather, but she does it with the birch bark, and I think it's very effective. The depth you get with it, with the feathers and so on, and then just the background of the birch bark. And Linda could tell you all of her work has a deep spiritual meaning, and she could give you even more in-depth appreciation of this. But I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. These are the earliest souvenirs of the community. What happened, you had itinerant photographers who would travel around to wee rural communities like Tweed. They would take pictures of significant buildings, send them to Austria and Germany, where they would make these beautiful souvenirs, and then they would be sent back to Canada for sale in the shops. And it's always surprised me, the most impressive structure in the village is the St. Cartha's Roman Catholic Church. And I have never seen one of these early souvenirs with St. Cartha's on it. And I've asked some of the Roman Catholic parishioners, and nobody recalls ever having it. So why it wasn't done, I don't know. We have later ones, plates and so on of the church and so on, but those are the earliest ones. They're very precious items, yeah. This is, believe it or not, a vacuum cleaner. You created your own vacuum. Wouldn't relish cleaning the house with it, but it was an incredible invention of its time. And you see where it is led now with the vacuums and so on. Here's a very interesting item. It was given to us by the Rowlands family, and Mrs. Rowlands, who was the mother of Morris Rowlands of Belleville, was a Houston, and this was their original family home. And actually Morris Rowlands was brought up using this. Now you have here a beautiful high chair, right? But that's not all. It's also a stroller. Now isn't that clever? You'll see on the top panel a painting done by one of our local artists showing how local people would use a saw like this to cut blocks of ice from the lake, which would then put on the sleigh, draw it up to the ice house where you packed it well in sawdust. That was your refrigeration for the summer. The bottom panel shows you in summer the Iceman going around with his load of ice, and he would check it with each household, that was his customer, whether they wanted a full block or part of a block. And if it was only part of a block, he would just break it into the size that you wanted, and then with these ice hooks, you'd take it into the house and put it in the top part. We had an ice box in our home in the village until 1955. At that time, Mr. Lavender, who was the iceman, had lost so many customers to electric refrigerators that it was no longer worth his while doing the ice. So in 1955, we finally had a refrigerator. About 20 years or so ago, I spotted in the upper hallway of a house over on Arthur Street across the river this beautiful stained glass window. It was slightly damaged. Well, it had come out of the hotel in Tweed. So my immediate response to that was, don't ever let that leave Tweed. And they didn't want it. So it was given to us, and we had a local man who worked with stained glass, Gary Bissell, restore it for us. And he did a beautiful job on that. But when we looked at the early picture of the hotel, you'll see that there were 2 stained glass windows. We kept asking people, have you seen a window like this? And no one seemed to have any record of it, not even the folk at the hotel. When we built the annex in 2000, we planned it with this space with the hope that someday we might get the matching one. Well, it didn't happen. And so in 2006, 120 years after this window was made, we had Gary Bissell duplicate it. And I think you'll agree he did a fantastic job. When you were working on the railroad, you had to have a hearty lunch. So you had your lunchbox. And your beverage was in this top part, which also had the cup attached. Isn't that clever? If you had to move just one boxcar, you couldn't call a locomotive to do that. So you'd put this, push it to the wheel of the car, boxcar, and pump it to get the car rolling. And once it started to roll, you could push it. It's rare you'll find anything like that. He asked if we would like to have his father's old sledge. His father would break the stone, and he was a great stonemason. And I thought, well, yes, we don't have a sledge that was used for breaking the stone in the area. So he brought it in. Guess what? No sooner had he left than I looked at here. N, T, and Q, R. Napanee, Tamworth, and Quebec Railway. Wow. Yeah, that was really a revelation to me. So it's not only a sledge, it actually was from that railroad, which was really great. One of the features in the archives is our genealogical section. We have over 500 local family histories, and we are always encouraging local families, when they do a family history, to please deposit a copy with us so that it's here for a permanent record. Also, all the filing cabinets are filled with files on important features of the community. It could be a business, or it could be one of the wee settlements in the area, a family, whatever. We glean whatever we can in our research and record it, and then we build up files on all of these different topics so that when people come in, we'll have it at our fingertips. But that requires a lot of behind-the-scenes work. A project which we finished just this summer with a summer student was the assessment rolls of the village of Tweed. So it covers from 1891, when the village was formed, until 1997, when it became the municipality of Tweed. That's an important record to us because if people are wanting to know when their grandfather had a store in Tweed, well, you can, by the assessment roll, okay, say he appears in 1911. Okay, he either came in late 1910 or early 1911 to get on that 11th assessment roll, and then you look to see when he no longer appears on the roll. And people have been really surprised when they see it and thrilled to be able to get it. And then also the assessment rolls identify exactly where the business was, what building it was in. So it's a wonderful study in that. If somebody comes in asking about a particular family or business and so on, I can share what I may know, but I also mention them. I'll do research on it and get back to them. And so I use all the records that we have here and then on the internet also to get what I can from census records. And I do files on it as much as I can. For people who are wanting it for personal reasons, I'll do it, and we charge $25 for the first hour or so of research, at the end of which we let them know what we have done. We are honest with them, whether it's worth any more time and effort. But I do keep open files, should something later come in. It's very time consuming, and people, it should all be on the computer. There are two reasons that I don't. Firstly, we haven't got the capability and staff to do it. And secondly, I'm sorry, but this is the heritage of our community. And it's not only for the information, but it's to help the community. So, if you want to learn about Tweed, you come here and learn about Tweed. And you leave some money in our eateries, and in our accommodations, and in our shops, and in our services. I think that's important, that our heritage be used also to benefit the community today financially. It's a beautiful community. I think it's very handy to people halfway between Ottawa and Toronto. The Trans-Canada Trail, a lot of possibilities for people to enjoy a quality of life. COVID has certainly shown that you don't have to be in the middle of a city to do your work. So wouldn't it be better to live in a community like this, and 5 minutes after you're finished work, you can be out swimming in the lake or walking on the trail rather than facing an hour in bumper-to-bumper traffic. For we rural communities, I think the hope lies in housing. Decent, affordable housing. Because that can help to rebuild communities. Industrial-wise, how do you compete with cities with their huge industrial parks and incentives and so on?
Given all of our technology today and the way things are going with younger people, do you find there's even more of a need to preserve history and show people what you're showing here?
Absolutely. I mean, just think how young Canadians have treated Sir Johnny Macdonald. They're judging former generations on today's standards. You can't do it. You have to recognize the day that these things happened. Surely we wouldn't do them today. But that doesn't give us the right to condemn them for what they did. And the defacement and demolition of heritage monuments is to the disgrace of our country.
What do you hope to see happen with the future of your lovely collection here and the Heritage Centre?
Well, I'm hoping that the municipality will take a more active role in it. This is over 30 years of collecting of information and artifacts. This is a heritage of the municipality, not just the Historical Society. And I feel it is too great a wealth to be left as a responsibility of a volunteer group. I think we need to have an actual commitment from the municipality to be involved in the operations and support of the Heritage Centre. Not that they necessarily run it, but to at least work with the Historical Society. The Historical Society should always have a role in it, being responsible for fundraising and operating it. But societies come and go. And I think it's very important to know, and I've had a lot of people in the community say the same thing. They want to know what's going to happen, and they want to be assured that it continues. And you can't have an assurance with a volunteer group. But an established municipality, this is a legitimate responsibility for a municipality, yes.